Hello everyone, welcome back to Pommyinoz. I hope we're all doing really well. We're in lockdown to 3 days after my birthday now, October the 26th, so got a lot of time to make content. A little bit of a change in the usual programming because I was going to do the Carlton series part 2, that will be a bit later in the week. Had a hectic week, my boss is riding me like I am at the Flemington Festival at the moment, so had a busy weekend readjusting to making sure that I am a dad first and foremost. So what we're doing is we're going to talk about Sam Walsh. He had a wonderful Brownlow yesterday, 30 votes, equaling Diesel and Chris Judd. Phenomenal to think that he's only played 3 completed seasons in the AFL. So what I thought is, how good could Sam Walsh get? So what we've done is let's take a look. So here we are, we've got the mystery midfielder. Now genuinely we've gone back to 2000 because that is roughly when all the stats have been taken. We did include the 90s and we did go a little bit further back as well and try to look at the similarities in the stats that were taken, 70s, 80s and 90s. And we've tried to create like a little bit of a formation of an algorithm. Very similar to what we do with TPI in the terms of we take players that are similar and then we try and create some fluxes and see what we can do in predictions. It's quite successful in today's game that. So we do find a common trait is that they do peak around 6 to 8 years and you find that that's where their best years are. Some players have it before, some players have it that. But what we mean by peak is they usually hit that wonderful kind of solid gradient line before they start to dip again. So we've kind of got a good analysation here of all the players in the history of the game. And what we've done is we've gone through and just looked at, let's say, the best 5 in the last, say, 20 odd years of midfielders and regarded as the players that most people would say. So the first guy we're going to look at is Nathan Buckley. There he is. Look at him. He looks like the kind of guy that you see on the side of a Wheaties packet presenting it, doesn't he? Saying you take 3 bowls of these and you have 30 touches. Let's look at his year in 1999. Jesus, that was hard to say. As the Will Smith song went. We've got 22 kicks for him, 4.9 marks, 7.4, 29.6 touches, 1.2 goals, 0.5 mark behinds, 2.1 tackles. It goes on, it goes on. And as you can see there, it was a real solid year for Nathan Buckley. 98, 99, the kind of you split in a pair. We chose the 99 one though just because we had more plethora of stats. They started to correlate a bit more. And you can see there from Buckley that he was a really complete midfielder. Obviously really did get far forward, which is kind of evident with the late 90s, early 90s midfielders. You found that the top players did hit the scoreboard, as they do today's game. Probably a little bit less, I would say, condensed though in them days. It was a lot more spread, it was a lot more faster paced, higher scoring. Nowadays they do slow it down, especially with the advent of more rotations as well. You found as well that these players had a lot more chance to get the touches, even though that you could make an argument that we are getting higher disposals individually. You did think that the spread was a lot more major. There was a lot more players getting higher touches. But Buckley is a really good starting point. The next guy we're going to see is Michael Voss, Carlton coach-elect, if you believe the press today. 24 touches for him, just under 4 marks, 0.8 goals. And he was a real contested beast, as we know. He was a real strong player in the clutch. And kind of a good hybrid from where we want to see Walsh. We want to see Walsh kind of half Buckley, half Voss, don't we? We want to see him attacking that final third and really get involved in them attacking phases. And Buckley really does fit the bill, as well does Voss, of like that complete midfielder. They've got really strong stat lines all across the board. The next, for me, one of my favourite players that I've ever seen, and a guy that really drew me to the game of AFL, because you love seeing your superstars, and there was none other more iconic, was than the bald head of Gary Ablett Jr. And we got to 2010, and this was a real dominant year for him. You got to remember, this was the back end of his Geelong days, just before he had that huge deal going to Gold Coast, as we know. And as you can see here, 31.5 touches for him, 1.8 goals, 4 tackles, 5.4 clearances, 1.3 marks inside 50. He even gave it off as well quite a bit, 0.6 goal assists. real solid footballer, and a footballer that was really kind of where I see Sam Walsh going in the terms of that everything ran through him. Gary Ablett for Gold Coast and Geelong towards his latter years at Geelong, he was the main man. He was the main event. And I think that is really where you see Sam Walsh. I think if you build a team around that guy, you're going to see him flourish. And it's kind of become Sam Walsh's team already in a certain aesthetic, hasn't it? And I think here, this is the gradient. This is the benchmark of what you want a midfielder to be. Ablett pretty much had it all at his disposal before injury really did curtail him towards the latter half of his career, although he was supreme. But very similar traits to Sam Walsh, uses his centre of gravity well. He really mixes it up, gets his own ball as well, gets on the outside if he needs to as well. Real phenomenal player. And if he can add the goal kick in, there's no reason that Gary Ablett Jr. could be the great template. The next is a hero of ours, a hero of mine. Was at West Coast at the time, but screw that. We couldn't find one at Geelong with Gary Ablett, so we thought we'd stick with the pattern and we'd have Chris Judd because he is a Carlton hero. And Juddy, 25.9 touches. He was a phenomenal player, winning 1.3 goals. Look at them contested possessions, 14.1, 6.2 clearances. He was a real contested beast who could break away and kick goals. And really, if we can get a Judd-like Walsh, we're having a laugh, aren't we, really? And he was a phenomenal player. He was a real supreme player. And I think a player that probably is underappreciated some way. Chris Judd had it all, didn't he? There was no real chinks in his armour. He was breakaway pace. He had the ability to get his own ball. He had his ability to get on the outside. He could slot in at half forward, make something happen. He was the link man. He was the main man. There was no real dramas for him. And again, he's another player that fits the pattern. A lot of these players as well, if you take their third year and then you go to their sixth, seventh year, there is a kind of a gradient of how they improve. And he's one that really is the metric. He's bang on. He's really that. They say progress isn't linear, but I disagree. If you look really carefully at the key metrics of a midfielder, he really does have that linear progression. And he's got a real good tale to tell because you see that he grew with that West Coast side and then did it again for Carlton, who were probably at the lower end of that rank. And the final guy we'll look at is probably one of the most complete years ever, 2017 for Dustin Martin. Look at him. Look at him. Similar hair to Pom. 29.8 touches it was, 1.5 goals, 3.5 tackles. You see the contested possessions, it was almost 50-50. People forget about that. His clearance work was elite. 1.2 goal assists, the real complete midfielder. 2017 was a remarkable year, and I think no one can argue it is probably one of the greatest years in AFL. That being said, let's look at Sam Walsh at the moment. What are we noticing here? Now, you probably want to see them goals go up. 29.8 touches is phenomenal. Clearance is 4.7, 11.5 contested possessions. And a lot of these stat lines, I would say, will improve as we get improved. Particularly clearances, first use is really important there. You look at some of the greats there that we've talked about. Particularly you see Judd, he was coming off, the great work of Coxey. As we know, he was a phenomenal ruckman. Nankervis was really dominant in 2017 as well. A lot of these players, were beneficiaries of really elite ruckmen. You look at Jared Witts for Gold Coast in the latter part of Gary Ablett's career. You look at Otten as well at Geelong. He was a very dominant ruckman who really did win the taps and always created that contested work which enabled the clearance. And you see there as Carlton get a bit better as well, as Pittner gets used to that midfield as the natural development gets, you'd expect to see that improve as well from Sammy Walsh. Now, where can Sam Walsh go? Now, using the algorithm and looking at it, this is where we could get him. Now, if you look here, 35.2 touches sounds a lot, right? It really does. However, you look at the modern day AFL and you look at also the ability for us to see what is going on at the moment in the AFL. You can see that Tom Mitchell averages 30.3 at the moment, Jackson McRae 34, 32.3. It's not out of the realms of possibility. And I would expect to see, big call, I reckon by that stage you will see that. 0.9 goals, we expect to see him increase there. 5.6 tackles, 6.2 clearances. These are really elite numbers, and I don't think they're beyond the realms of plausibility. And if we look at that, just looking at the algorithm, this is obviously the top end. It could flux anywhere from 32.1 to 35.2 to 37.8. Obviously, we've gone with the median of it. This is the median results for where we'd project him at the moment. And these are elite numbers. And you're talking at the moment, really enjoy the ride with Sam Walsh, because Sam Walsh is really a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And we are really privileged to see him. And if you look at the midfielders that are in the AFL at the moment, we're in a really privileged position that we're probably in almost a golden age of midfielders at the moment. You see how the Brownlow went. You've got Clayton in there. You've got Bont. You've got Wines. You've got all these top young players, and then you've got the young players coming through as well. There's Matt Rao to progress. There's Nick Dacos coming through the draft as well. You've got a lot of talent there. And then they've got some that we were expecting to flux, because just because you haven't done it in your third, fourth, fifth year, there is players as well that fit the bill that suddenly jump with opportunity. So then you can look at players like Dow, you can look at players like Rosie, who have got another level to go as football goes on. Cam Rayner being another one. So we could really see a year as well where these players get, and good players generate more good players. They really do push each other. And it is an exciting time. But Sam Walsh, these numbers here are something that we really need to, I think, truly appreciate at the moment, because the sky is the limit for Sam Walsh. A man who learns like that, a man who has a real akin for the game. These are what we could look at, and these are superb numbers. And I guarantee by the time Sam Walsh's game is done, I reckon you're looking at a 3-time Brownlow medalist. This kid is special, and his numbers really tick the bill. This is like kind of the once-in-a-lifetime thing, and you are really looking at the start of a dynasty for him. And I've got no shadow of a doubt that even though these numbers are really bold, I reckon these are the kind of numbers that we can expect for him. Hoping, touch wood, he stays fit and he stays willing. But he is a once-in-a-lifetime footballer and a guy that we're really privileged to see. And I think we can all appreciate it. Whether you're a Carlton fan like myself and a lot of you guys and girls who watch, or whether you're an opposition fan, he is a really elite talent and a guy that I'm really privileged to have the honour of just talking about once a week, probably more. That's Sam Walsh then. Let me know what you guys and girls think. It was a phenomenal effort for him last week as well. I mean, you've got to think this time last year, people were comparing him to Bailey Smith, Connor Rosie and players like that. And now he's in the ilk of your Wines, your Olivers, your Bontempellis, your McRae's. It's a phenomenal journey for him. And he's a wonderful footballer and one that we're really privileged to see. If you did like the content, please drop a like on the video. It really does let me know that you're enjoying it. Please let me know in the comments what you thought about Sam Walsh. Till next time, Pom out.